Well, welcome everyone from around the world, and thank you for joining us. I know we have a lot of participants from different time zones from around the world, and those of you joining us, PTC, glad to have you back. I know some of you were with us on Monday for our webinar then, which was CSPs DDoS Mitigation 101. It was a fantastic conversation. So we're going to continue that conversation tonight with 10 ways for CSPs to leverage DDoS services to attract new customers and increase revenue. So just to let you guys know, we do still have our networking lounge with PTC, so stop by. I was told that the networking lounge is active for the next like 30 days. So a lot of really great information on there with Nexusguard. You can have access to our threat reports. You can set up a meeting, you can schedule a chat, a lot of really great things. Oh, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Josie Taylor on behalf of Nexusguard. I will be your moderator and host for today's panel discussion. It is my pleasure to introduce our panelists with Nexusguard. We have two leading experts in the DDoS mitigation world with us today. First, we have Alex Hisa. To give you a little background on Alex, here we go. Short and sweet, short and sweet. Alex is a veteran in the telecom tech business, having worked for major corporations such as MCI, Quest, TW Telecom, Level 3 and above net in sales, project management, and leadership roles. Since 2014, Alex has been involved in the cybersecurity space, working for companies like Black Lotus, which is now Lumen, Nexusguard as a DDoS cybersecurity specialist, and also serves on the board of directors for the Information Systems Security Association in the OC chapter of California. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Next, we have Xenophon Giannis, also known as Zen. Zen is an accomplished executive with over 18 years of experience in building, sales, and leading B2B sales efforts. Prior to joining Nexusguard, he was executive sales director of Above Net Communications. In his 10-year tenure there, he helped to build their West Coast sales organization. He was the former SVP of sales for ZenEdge, a cybersecurity company focusing on mitigating DDoS attacks, and was also the SVP of sales for Black Lotus Communication. Is that where you two met?
We actually met at Above Net, but that's a longer story.
Okay, okay. Well, welcome, Zen.
Thank you, Josie. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and just a couple of housekeeping notes for those of you who have questions. Feel free to type in your Q&A, and Zen and Alex will get to that at the end of our panel discussion. So just type that into the chat room, and I will make sure to get those questions answered live at the end of our panel. All right, guys, let's just dive right in. Let me just scroll through our screens here. The state of DDoS today. I know, with a lot that happened last year with the pandemic, then maybe talk to us a little bit about what you guys saw in your threat report over the last year, and just kind of the overall trends that you saw with the pandemic and DDoS attacks, and how the whole thing affected the year, and where are we now with the state of DDoS?
Right. Okay. Sure. So what I'd like to do, what I've done is, like, we just released our threat report for Q3. I think our Q4 threat report will be coming out in March, because we do all the analysis and stuff. So basically, what I like to do is like get headlines from the news, current headlines, and then show how real world, how they would apply to what we're seeing in the threat report, and best practices to protect yourself. So one of the top ones, Wimkin, free speech network, kind of like Parler, was hit with a massive DDoS attack last week after being banned by Apple's App Store. They were also one of those Twitter alternatives. So I guess some of their users, this is one of what we see motivating attacks a lot of times. They're upset, they don't get their latte, they misspell the name at Starbucks. They get a DDoS attack, and just to prove the point. So I think some of their users thought they were being taken down rather than being taken out of the App Store, and they attacked Wimkin with a huge attack, and which they were blaming Apple on. Another one, we've been seeing a rise in hackers that are using DDoS attacks to extort companies for ransom. It's really the same as like the ransomware where they encrypt your files. It's just a different stick to kind of like threaten people with, right? So instead of saying we're going to encrypt all your files, they're hitting people with small little DDoS attacks, taking down the site briefly, and then saying, listen, we know how much traffic you do, we know how much money you're making, pay us 5 Bitcoin this week, or we're going to take you down all weekend, and we know it's Black Friday. So that's on the increase, and you see that quite a bit in situations where you have where the market is very dictated with competitors. Like, so if one competitor goes down, the other one would win. So things like that. Sometimes these are for hire, but the fact that there's really no police on the internet just shows how this is kind of like Wild West, and it still happens where you think, like, well, can't I call somebody? We can call Interpol. Anyway, third one that we saw is Citrix devices are being abused as DDoS attack vectors. Now, what's happening with Citrix? They're one of their protocols. It's DTLS, which is kind of a version of TLS, and then similar to UDP for like streaming protocols. It's being taken over. They have a security leak. People can take it over. So they're not necessarily using the Citrix. They're not really, DDoSing Citrix devices. What they're doing is they're using them as a tool to send reflection traffic. So they spoof that they're somebody else. Like, let's say, you say, oh, hey, I'm if I want to DDoS Alex, I go, oh, I'm Alex. And hey, by the way, send me everything that you got in your entire, in your entire directory, which, so you send a 1 packet in and 100 packets come out. So it's called an amplification attack. They're using the Citrix network for that reason. This is timely because Citrix just found out about it. They're saying that they can't even do anything about it until next year. I mean, well, actually later this year, but like, it's going to take them a while because they got to roll out the patch to all their users. They got to let people, so if you're running a Citrix device on your network, you might be part of the problem, and it's not even your fault. So these are the kind of things you see. Like these attackers are very very resourceful. They don't have to put up their own botnets; they steal other people's. And this kind of reflection attack is one that we see, and we'll talk to it in about a minute. Is one of the trending attacks, which we call either the bits and pieces, or some people call it a carpet bombing attack, where they use the reflection attacks to kind of hit ISPs, and they've been really doing a really good job of taking them down. And we'll tell you about that in a minute. But anyway, so that's this happens. So Citrix is one that they're publicizing. It happens all the time. Happens on AWS. People spin up servers, leave them, they get used all the time. One of the things that we're going to talk about with our threat report, one of the other thought leaders here was saying that DDoS attacks in 2020, telecommunications ISPs was up 40%, but e-commerce was up 300% over 2019. So that's pretty huge. And basically saying 8.4 million DDoS attacks per year or more, actually this year. That's like 23,000 a day or 16 every minute. I mean, just think about that. Like, that's what's going on, and that's on the rise. And, we get kind of caught up in like, oh, it's a 100 gig attack, 200 gig attack. Majority are between 1 and 10 gigs, and they can do a lot of damage. So that's why they're saying, because those are easier to launch. They don't take up a lot of resources, and they don't cause a lot of problems on the internet. Like a 100 gig attack, everyone can see. They'll take it down. 1 gig attack, that'll go unnoticed for a while. Then the last one is because we're going to talk about, our report for Q3 is based on how COVID, more people home, so there's doing a lot more online gaming. So one of our, and that's on the rise. Blizzard has been getting hit with a constant DDoS attack on their World of Warcraft servers. And at first they were not admitting it, but all the users are like, look, they have high latency. They keep getting disconnected to the game. Half the people can't log in. And so they're basically, they're admitting to it. And what's happening is, what they think is happening is These could be small DDoS attacks. They don't have to be the big ones. They could be like application layer. So if they're DDoSing the application server, where it's the login, the authentication server, all of a sudden you're out of the game. Like you can't log in. So they close the game to the world. So that's kind of what we see happening quite often in the state of news today. But yeah,
Okay.
so what was any questions? Anyone? Alex, any comments on that? Any
No.
any viewpoints? Okay. So key observations from a report.
I did notice then, touching to your point about online gaming, Nexusguard was featured in the New Zealand Security Brief, which is a cybersecurity service newsletter. And you guys talked about how online gaming over the last year was a huge hotbed for DDoS attacks. I mean, why do you think that is? Is it for revenue generation, or is it just because it's an extremely lucrative target? Or
so you're saying online gaming in general, why they were a big
online
target?
gaming DDoS?
Yeah. So gambling. Well,
Is it for DDoS attacks?
Well, so there's a couple of reasons. Even though like you might think that online gaming is not for money, that's not true. It is for money. There's a lot of money in the games. The platforms, the e-gaming, the esports gaming, there's probably just as much money like being wagered on that stuff as there is in real like football or whatever. And then the prizes on those big tournaments are millions of dollars, and then there's sponsorships and all that. So if you have a team and they're playing against another team and they're in the game, if you DDoS the game and knock the other players out, they can't win. So you might not win, but I mean, if you could DDoS individual users' consoles so that they can't, their character won't react and you can kill them. That's part of the part of the impetus for it. And then it could be almost like a ransom attack. A lot of it, because these are younger people doing it, street cred, like I took down World of Warcraft, look at me, and that's how they usually get caught, because they can't keep their mouth shut. They have to tell everyone how cool they were. So that happens a lot. And then but in general, what we've seen this year is that people used to think like, oh, gambling versus online gaming, that gambling always was more like because it's casinos, whatever. Well, that industry is probably about 60 billion a year. The online gaming, video gaming, esports is $160 billion this year alone, and that's on an increase. And they're expecting it to grow. What did they say? By the end of 2022, it's going to be 190, almost 200 billion. So it's surpassed what real gambling is. I mean, just think about it this way. What is that? Candy Crush. Those guys are making like $1 million a day, like or more, just on people buying whatever, buying gems. So, and so part of the other thing is because it's entertainment and people are stuck in their houses. You've got people can't go to the movies, they can't go to the bars, they can't go to anywhere else. So they're going to stay home with their headset on. It's kind of a social community. You can kind of hang out with other people. So you're seeing a rise.
It is. I gamed this year. That became what I would like to call a quarantine hobby. I started playing Call of Duty.
Do you have the leather glove? Where's the leather glove?
No, I don't have any of that. I just have a headset. But you can definitely tell when there's a so-called, PC hacker playing against you, and you get shot, that's some ridiculous thing, and you're like, how did that even happen? So I mean, Alex, are you guys getting calls from people's houses saying, hey, I think I got DDoS in my own home?
Yeah, we have always gotten calls. It's kind of cute sometimes. We have kids that call us and say, hey, I'm getting DDoS, can you help me? And I said, which company do you work for? And they said, no, it's not a company, it's just me, and I know who's attacking me. So unfortunately, we can't help those people. They have to contact their ISPs and get them to help out a little bit.
Yeah.
So it definitely starts.
Well, to answer your question, I was just kind of looking back at this thing. So one of the games, Siege 6, one of the reasons they got DDoS pretty hard was they had just put out a new game update, and it rolled out across, and it reset everyone's status in the platform. So a lot of them got pissed because they no longer had credits. But then some of the guys learned that if they DDoS their opponents and knocked them out of the game, they could cheat their way back up to a higher ranking, and it would look like they won all these matches when they didn't, and so they would be like they gained to the top. So it was a way for them. So DDoS is a way, like if I'm playing against you, I just DDoS you, I get the win, and then I'm higher than you on the board. So there's all sorts of, to them that's just as good as money, right? So so that's the gaming space. Let's see what else we got here at tech analysis. So on the whole, you're seeing DDoS is always going to go up. I mean, it's going to go up because networks keep getting bigger. Just like the number of people streaming Netflix goes up exponentially every year, right? Or online video, any kind of video. So and the bandwidth. So and as the quality of videos goes to HD to 4K to 8K or whatever it is, well, the amount of bandwidth being used goes up. So the amount of bandwidth available for attacks goes up. So it's kind of an inverse ratio of how much bandwidth is available on the network, how many computers are compromised. Yeah, sure, you're going to see a 100 gig attack, 200 gig attack, more commonplace. And as more people put stuff in the cloud, you have a lot of these orphaned servers that are sitting out there that are open for people to just take over and DDoS. Let's see. Anything else on the State of the Union, Alex, that I might have forgot?
You have this snazzy. I have this snazzy chart here. So funnel.
So on the so one of the attacks we were talking about the bits and pieces. So this funnel right here is an explanation on one of the big what do you call it? The big debates in DDoS or in the world is, do you have an on-prem device? Do you have one inline, or do you have it? Do you have a cloud-based? Oh, you only need cloud-based. You don't need inline. Well, what do I need? And we say it depends. And I'll tell you why. So this is a perfect example. If you are an ISP, smaller, medium-range ISP, or whatever, and you're getting your internet connectivity at a POP. At that POP, you're connecting with, at the very top, the internet POP where all the big carriers come in. You're going to peer with them. Or peer with some of your other providers, and then you're going to buy some transit in the next layer down where it says the transit layer, and then below that you've got your border routers, and then below that you've got your access routers that you're going to distribute to your customers. So maybe you have 40 gigs of upstream capacity if you're a smaller ISP, but the POP can probably handle, with all the carriers and everybody you're connected to, probably could be 100 gig, maybe 200 gig that could go towards you. You bought a snazzy 100 gig box and you put it right in line, right in your scrubbing center, and it can do 100 gigs of capacity. But if you're throttled by your upstream capacity, so really you can only mitigate a 40 gig attack here. And you really don't want to do that, because if you get anywhere near saturation, now you're not only got the DDoS attack, but now all your regular users that aren't under attack are also getting squeezed out, and nothing's going through the pipe. So, depending on how at risk you are, an inline device is great for monitoring, for detection, for attack mitigation locally. Let's say it's like we said, 1 to 10 gig attacks, great. For larger attacks, or if you're a service provider where you have multiple customers, you need some kind of offload. You need to be able to get the attack away from you. So that's why, a lot of people pitch hybrid now, where it's like, you have this, great. You also need a cloud. So when the attack gets too big, you hit the emergency button, and then you start announcing the traffic out of another scrubbing center. Traffic goes there, they sync the attack, or you can do it in simultaneously. Let's say you have one locally for you. You're taking some traffic in there, but then let's say the international traffic, you're letting it dump, so that, because most of the DDoS attacks are happening far away from you. That's where they originate. So you want them to kind of get sucked in to the scrubbing network before they get to you, right? So you don't want them to come to your POP and come in the door. You want them to get sucked in if you're in LA, you want them to get sucked in Amsterdam. So that's why you want a combination of the two. Yeah, if you're a single customer that's running a website, sure, a device might be good, or a little proxy device. But this is kind of the idea of why we say, like, most likely if you're a service provider, you need a kind of a dual approach, like on-prem and cloud-based, to make sure that you're protected.
So Alex, when we're talking about, the different sort of methods to mitigate DDoS attacks, what would you think would be the first area to start in?
You want me to take that one?
Yeah,
Zen?
go ahead, Alex. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So, yeah, well,
That's
Zen
Alex.
covered a bunch of these, but so the the most basic, simple way, cheap way to do it is the black hole, the proverbial black hole, and it's the remotely triggered black hole. So it could be a destination IP address, it could be a source IP address, and essentially you're taking offline the subject that's being attacked, or the subject or the attacker, right? So you're taking it out completely, but it does accomplish uh, the intended purpose, which is to take somebody offline. So it's not really the preferred method, but it's better than the alternative, which is to completely take your entire network down because of a single individual that's getting attacked. Let's say that kid that's playing, Xbox games, and that person is getting attacked, and then your whole network goes down. It's not worth it, right? So that's when you apply the black hole. The other method that's relatively new, it's called the BGP flow spec. It's a lot more granular than a black hole, so you can actually set some parameters and be very specific to what you want to block. You want to block everything, right? So you block certain things, you look at different parameters, whether it's the length of the fragment, and the fragment of the packet, and things like that, without getting into a lot of details. But it's still not granular enough. There's some issues or challenges, not issues, but really challenges with BGP flow spec, because it requires that the community deploys BGP flow spec, so everybody has this, and that's not the case. There's equipment vendors that do support it. There's some that maybe perhaps not yet, or there's ISPs that don't have the skill sets to deploy BGP flow spec and maintain it. So it can work, it may not work. There's an instance last year where BGP flow spec was misconfigured, and it took down an entire network. So it is something that requires a little bit more skill set, and you got to be really careful how you implement it, etc. It is a decently effective way to mitigate DDoS, but it is not a true native DDoS type of mitigation platform or protocol. And then then we get into the ways that kind of Zen covers. So I'm not going to repeat what he said, but there's different ways that traditional DDoS mitigation takes place, which is cloud or appliance. And I think Zen covered it exhaustively, so I'm not really going to cover that.
Well,
Alice,
getting into.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Zen.
No, I was going to say,
No.
go to your challenges. We'll bring it in there.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was just going to bring up, get all that being said, what do you think that the biggest CSP's key challenges are right now? I mean, you mentioned, online gaming, everyone's sitting around at home and having a lot more free time. Like, what are the biggest challenges they'll face, and based off of the information that you received in last year's threat report, where do you see as the biggest key challenges of upcoming, and what can they do about that?
Yeah.
Alex.
So key challenges that I see, and then I can let Alex jump in here. Yeah. Sorry, did you want? So key challenges is that now that DDoS is becoming more mainstream, and so like in the past, DDoS was not really the ISP's problem. Their problem was keeping the network up, and if you were a customer who got DDoS, they were going to no route you, and sorry you got attacked. That's your problem. Now, things have evolved, and DDoS is more mainstream. It's become everyone seems to, it's on the tip of everyone's tongue. People have heard about it. Now people need to have strategies around it. So the customers are asking for it, and ISPs risk losing, or CSPs risk losing business if they don't have a strategy for it or some kind of product. Now the challenge is, how do you maintain, do what you do best, which is run a network and provide all this security that, that might be going outside of the reach of your current forte, like what you really do best. You run a network, so yeah, protecting, and you're already protecting yourself against layer 3-4 attacks. So yeah, the big volumetric attacks, that makes sense. And then you can extend that to your customers. Okay, but then there's always the fine line, like, well, how do I just include this, or do I charge for it? And when am I giving too much away? When am I getting taken advantage of by the customer? So usually they're just trying to be very agreeable to the customers until they realize that, wait, I'm mitigating 100 gig attacks for this guy for free. That doesn't make sense. But then where the challenge is like, it's evolving into more. Like, so, customers are now going into the cloud, they're going into, their applications are getting hit. And so they're saying, hey, I need you to protect me from my application, my layer 7 stuff. And that's not something that ISPs are usually geared up to do. All their monitoring devices are monitoring network traffic. They're not monitoring application-based traffic. So the only way to do it is to get, a specific device or, proxy kind of firewall in between the customer's application and the rest of the world, with like a DNS proxy, and which is done. That's the way it's done. But you kind of have to be like, the customer has to be an active participant in that. And then who's, are you reselling someone else's service? Because you probably don't do that. So, but to the customer, it doesn't matter. They're like, fix my problem. And you don't want to risk losing business because you don't have the answer to their problem. So either you've got to partner with somebody and resell their services, or come up with a solution yourself, or the other option is just to say, nope, we don't do that, and hope that that doesn't affect your business. I mean, Alex, you have I think you have a couple others, right?
Yeah, so I mean, just looking at a macro level, right? ISPs way back in the day, in the late 90s, it was a hot commodity, right? It wasn't a commoditized product, but it was a hot product, and everybody needed it, wanted it, and they were willing to pay, a lot of money for it. The cost of DS3, which is 45 megabits per second circuit back in the late 90s, was $45,000. Today, in my house, I get a 500 meg connection in and out, fiber optic based connection, and it's $50 a month. So the cost has really drastically gone down. So, from a macro level, I see the problem with ISPs is that they're having to compete at a very minuscule margin. And yet you have to evolve like everybody else, like Zen was saying. You have to transform your company into something that is not just pushing packets. It's also securing things and, becoming a cybersecurity firm as well, MSP, if you will. And that's not easy. It's not cheap. It's, it requires skilled workforce, and it requires processes and expensive equipment or services that you lay on top of everything else they have to buy and maintain, right? So it's not easy to be an ISP anymore, and not everybody is going to be a multi-billion-dollar corporation with unlimited resources, seemingly unlimited resources, to be able to build your own stack of security tools and whatnot. So then, to me, that's a challenge that needs to be addressed, because if you don't evolve, eventually you're just a commoditized product with no differentiation, and I think you
become obsolete.
Yep.
I mean, I always say you don't want to become the Blockbuster of ISPs, because you might be the new hotness a few years ago, but right now the trend we're seeing, like before people were talking about, oh, do you have on-ramp to AWS? Do you have some cloud-based services? Now everybody better have cloud, or else, or at least access to the cloud, an interconnection to the cloud, maybe their own cloud, something something with a cloud in it, like people want it. And then now on top of that, you're seeing a lot of these ISPs, they're adding SD-WAN services, they're adding endpoint security. They've already added CDN from before. CDN is now becoming commoditized. And then DDoS services, right? Or web application firewall. and things like that. So it's unavoidable for the CSP to not deal with it, right? And so then the challenge is, when you say productization, monetization, how do you do it? How do you make it so today's threats are not tomorrow's threats. So right now there's a need, right? Right now customers are seeing, we're seeing this a lot, the mid-range ISPs that are like regional, or they might be national, but they're smaller. They're not like the huge guys. But they have customers, and they may have like a huge embedded base of like E-rate education customers or government customers, that every year they get these customers. They're regional, local, they got it. And then this year the company goes, yeah, either the school or whatever, we want to go with you, but we need DDoS. We know it's not covered under E-rate, but we're getting DDoS all the time. We need that on our service. And if you guys can't provide it, we have to put this out to bid. And so now they're getting their embedded revenue base is being put at risk because of DDoS. They don't have the DDoS. So then they scramble and they're like, hey, we've had people come to us. Do you have a one-off for us? Can you just correct this one customer? Because they don't want to lose their bid. They weren't expecting that it was going to become that big a deal, right? It's one thing to say, I don't want to do DDoS or security for new customers. But when you start eating away at what you got already in the bank, that's scary to them. So whether or not an ISP decides if they want to do security services and add them, they've already made a choice. Either they choose they don't want to do it, or they choose they do. Right. But that's going to take you down a certain path. And
also kind of going back to the attrition of revenue, right? So very large ISPs that will go unnamed, but they're public traded companies. So we see their numbers, and the ARPUs, the average revenue per unit, or the average price per meg, is decreasing at a rate of 15 to 20% every year. Yep. So when you have to invest money because you have to play the game, and in the example that Zen just mentioned here with the school districts and whatnot, and maybe government contracts, healthcare, whatever, when you have to play the game, you do have to invest that. But how do you do that when your bandwidth is going down as well? The price of your bandwidth is going down, your revenues are shrinking, and you have to hire people. So how do you survive, right? So I think that leads to the productization, monetization conversation. Don't just
they have to supplement revenue somehow.
Well, you got to grow you got to change, you got to adapt. And so that's the thing, right? So let's say you realize, okay, I got to do this. How do you adapt quickly? We've seen, so the three challenges now you've decided you're going to do something, because you got to do something. Do you go out and buy a box? Who do I buy? You want to buy that, they say you never get fired for buying Cisco or Juniper or whatever. Well, you're not going to get fired for buying Arbor. Arbor is probably the leader in devices, right? But if you spend $1 million on an Arbor setup, which might be overkill, and then all the support and maintenance, and then you train your guy and all that, are you going to get the return on that, right? And how long will it take you to get that up and running so that you can actually put customers on it that you feel comfortable that they're protected? So that you might do all this and fumble the ball and then still lose your customers. So you have time to market, you have cost. You don't want to go out of business trying to stay in business, right? So because think about that. So the box costs one thing. There's yearly O&M, and then you got to have someone run it. So. And you can't have one person run it. You got to maybe have two, because you have 24/7 DDoS, whatever.
You need 5 people to do that. So that's $500,000.
Right. Yeah. But not in California. In the Bay Area, that's probably like $1 million.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're talking Tulsa. But
that actually brings me to a good point. I want to skip through, because you're about to touch on it. We just touched on this, but this brings me to a good point when you're talking about. You can do the box, or a lot of people say, I'm just going to do it myself. And then, when you're productizing DDoS protection, or you're just doing, a DIY, what then are the challenges of, DIY and productization of DDoS protection?
Right.
For the different options.
So like we said, like we've been mentioning, the main players. Each one of the DDoS players that we talk about, especially the device or the service companies, like I said, Arbor is probably one of the best for the DDoS box itself, and they got the monitoring and the whole thing. And they started as a network monitoring company and then added DDoS. and that's really been their key because they've got the detection. Well, so they built that for, as that was their flagship product, but they didn't do application protection, so they don't have that other piece that you need. So if you're an Arbor shop, you still need to have, if you want to do application protection, you need to have a third-party solution like a Cloudflare and Encapsula, or you got to buy some boxes like an Imperva or an F5 or a Radware, and then put that in. And then you might need some DNS protection as well. So now you've got, okay, now you're going to do your own solution. So for clean pipe and DDoS, you buy your Arbor. That's $1 million. Then you go buy your Radware, Imperva. You need a WAF. You need a good WAF too, so you put that in there. And you buy your Imperva. Then you buy your whatever your DNS protection is going to be. You might still have to buy a third-party cloud. So let's say you find somebody, or you come next door, you come somewhere, you buy a cloud. But then you got to tie it all together. You got to put it into a portal. You got to have the APIs all talking, because it needs to be a product. It can't just be like, yeah, we do this for you, and then you send them an email like, you were under attack. We got it. Like, people aren't taking that anymore. They're like, what was the size of the attack? This, that, and the other. So, okay, are you going to create a portal for them? Great. Are you going to integrate it to your portal? Fine. How are you going to handle giving them weekly, monthly, daily reports on what's going on? Because if you're buying DDoS protection, you've got to take that to your boss at some point and say, what are we paying for? Well, look at the reports. We had this kind of thing. We saw this malicious traffic happen. If you have WAF services, you're like, hey, look, these guys were trying to inject code into our credit card authorization, and it was bad. And we were able to shut down that whole country because we don't have anybody in India or whatever. So it gives you visibility, just gives you a lot of awareness. And then when you give that to the customers, that's huge. Well, that needs to be produced. Like I said, you run a network. You don't run a software company, a portal company. So you've got to create all this. So we've seen customers that have tried to do it, spent a lot of money, a lot more than what we cost. And 18 months later, they still don't have an active product that they can sell to their customers. They have nobody paying anything on it. They've paid for the gear, they've paid for their people, they've implemented it, and it's not cohesive. Right. So one of the things we call 360 DDoS protection is because you really holistically want to protect every aspect. The network protection we call origin protection, right? Because that's where the servers live, that's the infrastructure, that's the routers and things like that. The next layer is the application protection, because that's what you're putting on the network. Those are more finite, granular attacks and more sensitive to traffic. So you've got, and then we've got DNS protection, which is kind of an extension of application protection, because DNS is like an app. But so these are all the different places that somebody can attack you to take you down. They're going to just knock you out at the knees and take down your air, or they're gonna overload your application so it can't service anybody. Like, for example, they might just take out your payment gateway. So you have an e-commerce site, shopping, everyone's put everything in the cart, they can't check out. They just closed your register. And then, or they go hit the DNS so that your website doesn't resolve. They put in, josietaylor.com, goes nowhere. Not that that's happening now. I'm sure it goes somewhere.
Well, so the bottom line is, like, the vast majority of ISPs, right? They don't, like Zen was hammering down here, is basically they don't have the resources, the tools to create this really sophisticated program for, cybersecurity DDoS services. And what ends up happening, just to kind of address that. So what are some ways that ISPs are monetizing? Well, so the first thing is they're not, right? Because they just don't have it. And so the only, and DDoS purchase for ISPs and even enterprise has traditionally been more of a reactive action, right? So they get attacked, they go, oh shit, I need protection, right? So they go and get protection, but they're not really thinking, I need to productize this. So the product manager for an ISP or a company is not even involved, right? It's more of the IT and network guy that is evaluating different solutions, and then that's how they purchase. But they're not really looking at it from how can I monetize this? Because, like Zen described, it can be pretty complicated for you to build a team.
Well, so and it's unproven as well. Like, people don't understand it. They know how to spend money on it to protect their network, but they don't know how to sell it.
Yeah, they think they can buy all this stuff, and then they get the bigger problem. So
Alex, there are examples,
what are your thoughts on DIY? Do you think that, obviously these are massive challenges. And then at the end, they should have just gone straight to the provider, and they could have, not had to go through all the things.
Well, there's something to be said about controlling your destiny. I mean, you
True.
kind of want to do DIY to a certain point, but you don't want to have to like. So, if I'll use Alex's example, if I want to build a hamburger shop, right? I could go build one from scratch, or I can go buy a McDonald's franchise. Now, it's still my business. I'm still making everything, but I didn't have to create the menu, create the brand, create the, create the, the menu, the filet of fish, the dollar menu, the jingle. I'm loving it. Like, I didn't have to do any of that. Like that's turnkey, right? So it's still your business, but you basically took someone else's experience and their success, and you're implementing that rather than reinventing the wheel, right? I mean, you could, but I mean there's more of a gamble, right? If you do it on your own, and so that's one of the things that we will tell people. It's like, so you see a lot of customers where they or ISPs where they get down that path. They do it like, do you sell DDoS? They're like, well, we do it for certain customers. And that's because somebody said they needed it. So somebody called the CEO. The CEO came down and said, you better do this. So they're doing it to get this big deal, and that's it. But it's not it's not being advertised or whatever. So they don't know. So traditionally, DDoS was looked at by the engineers. The purchasing for DDoS was engineers because they're to protect the network. Now, if a CSP is doing it correctly, that decision is going also in concert with the product person or the CFO, right? Because it's also a revenue stream, as well as, so you're doing both. You're actually decreasing the cost of what your protection for your network is by having your own infrastructure, but then you're also creating another revenue. You're doing value added revenue per dollar spent with you already per megabit. So if somebody's buying 1 megabit, you'll probably get a 25% increase on that megabit, just if you sell DDoS clean pipe on top of it, right? So to get to there, though, you got to show customers like, okay, what's your average? What do you spend right now on your so what do your customers spend with you? 100 megs? Okay, what's that? 100 megs is $200 a month. Great, plus support charge. Awesome. Okay, so if they bought clean pipe on top of that, what would that be? Well, if it's 25% increase, then it's, let's say it's $250. So you've made an increase to your base. Now, most customers, 25% is not that big a deal to get the DDoS, and then you throw in a portal on top of it, and you throw this other thing. So you're creating this value add, which also creates stickiness, right? So because look at it this way, if you're becoming a commodity and you're just internet, right? At a certain point, and if they've gone out to Cloudflare and got the services for third party for whatever, or maybe bought a cloud third party, great. They can bring those services with them anywhere else. What's keeping them with you? Why are they loving you? Now they want to pay you more because they only want to have one bill. They don't want to have too many vendors. They already trust you because you've been their ISP for a while. But you're basically kicking them out because you're not giving them the services that they need to survive. So then something happens, or they get acquired, or they change hands, and all of a sudden then you're out, and you're starting over from scratch, which is a bad place to be with a customer. So so that's kind of the so the productization is basically understanding how to offer it, and setting limits and like packaging it, and that really depends on who your market niche is, right? It's not like one size fits all. I mean, you can be selling Cadillacs and you can be selling Ford Fiestas. I mean, there's room in this DDoS market for everybody. So I mean, and you can make money on those lower. Sometimes the smaller ones are the ones where you make the most margin on.
Yeah. So I mean that kind of brings us to Nexusguard managed DDoS protection solutions for CSPs. I mean, ultimately, why Nexusguard? Alex,
you go ahead.
This one for you.
I'll take this one.
You go ahead.
So
you're wearing the jacket. That's funny.
I have the jacket, so I'll take this one.
The Power Blazer.
Nexusguard really pioneered this movement, this transformational movement for ISPs, and they really did. They really packaged what they've built for themselves. So Nexusguard became a company, since 2008. They developed this process, the people, they trained people, and they created their own technology, and So they had the formula, right? Like the McDonald's franchise model. And they say, why can't we empower ISP, CSP communication service providers to do the same? And instead of us selling to enterprise customers, to end users, why don't we enable them to do it and build their own scrubbing centers while they leverage our expertise, our resources, and our technology, and where they don't have to go through all those challenges that we kind of covered, personnel, budget, limited budget, and all these, having to come up with their own marketing plans and pricing plans and all of these things. Why not go with a proven solution that gets you up and running in a matter of a short few months, 3 to 4 months, you're up and running in your own DDoS business. All of a sudden, you're a major player within your market that doesn't just offer ISP service bandwidth, you're actually offering protection for your DNS service, protection for a website, for your enterprise customers. You're offering a dashboard that gives full visibility to your network. Plus, you're protected from DDoS. And even if you're increasing, let's say the average revenue per customer at a 15 to 20% rate, which is very reasonable with this type of service, then you kind of actually directly address the decrease in ARPU based on the depreciation of the price per meg in the bandwidth world, right? So I think that Nexusguard has come up with a very unique model that not only provides the protection globally through our global scrubbing center, but it also places a specific appliance, a Dell MX7000, in the provider's POP, if you will, and so you have the best of both worlds.
Alex, mention this. I think we keep skating around the SOC, like the benefits of having the SOC and like having them monitoring as well. Can you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, my buddy Mandy at Nexusguard, he manages the SOC, and I know that, one of the things that, Zen will say the same thing, but one of the things that veterans like us in the telecom business, we always brag about at the end of the day is how you treat your customers. Are you there for them when they need you? Right.
Yeah,
and I think the
absolutely.
white glove treatment that we provide, Mandy's team in the SOC, and they're very well equipped. They have a tremendous amount of experience and resources. We have continual training as well in our organization. So we're always developing new analysts, and these guys are specific to our technology, to the DDoS business, and so they're second to none in my opinion. So when you couple that with the technology that we have, so we have people, we have the technology, we have the process in place, then really it's priceless, right? So it really is a differentiator in the marketplace. These guys are available 24/7, and I've seen them. I've been with Nexusguard for 4 or 5 years, and so I've seen these guys day in, day out, battle through different kinds of attacks, zero-day attacks, from small, very surgical attacks where it's really complicated to, like Zen was saying, like a small 5 meg attack can take down an entire network. And I've seen these guys battle through, so yeah, it's a very important point there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, Nexusguard really is the leader in DDoS protection and mitigation solutions for solution providers for security. Is there any final thoughts that you guys have before we do have some Q&A? So is there any sort of, I mean, that was a great, you kind of hit a home run with that last note, Alex. Zen, do you have any final thoughts before I get into the Q&A?
No, I mean, I will say this, that like we were mentioning before, what we're seeing, everything going to cloud and all that, application protection is where it's going, because everyone's just going to assume that the network is protected on the DDoS level. So if you're not, focusing on that or trying to figure out a solution for your customers, someone else will. I mean, it's going to be, because even at Amazon, the networks, they have Shield and it protects the network, but it doesn't protect the apps. Like, so whatever you put in there, it's not protected by Amazon. So you still have to come up. It's still a pain point that they have to deal with. And so, you know, having a strategy that can deal with that, and actually having somebody that can actually detect, you know, to detect, react, and mitigate. That's also like part of your team is really important to have. So if not with us, find somebody that can do that for you, because that's really important.
Yeah. We had a question that came in earlier in the week and we touched on it. I think it's important to bring up again. Alex, I think you may have answered this one. The pros and cons of inline solutions versus out of band solutions. What would you say to that?
Yeah, so I think Zen kind of covered that, but
That was the fun.
the advantage of an inline is that, you know, the traffic, whether it's inbound, egress, or ingress, it's always coming through the appliance that you have, and that's great because you're not diverting traffic. It's just in real time is analyzing all the packets and you know, doing the detection and mitigation at the same time. But you have to imagine that the type of processing and the power that it needs to do that is unbelievable, right? So, you know, because of that, most appliances that are inline are mostly offered for enterprise customers that have very limited bandwidth, like maybe 1 or 10 gigs capacity in their network. They have a single connection, and that's what you do. It's kind of like a firewall, right? And then, but the problem with it is that, you know, as bandwidth becomes bigger for a CSP, an ISP, then you're looking at 20, 40, 100 gigs. Then it becomes more cost prohibitive to have that type of infrastructure, right? So then you mix and match with that appliance plus a hybrid, which becomes more of a do-it-yourself application, where now you're out of band, right? You have both. You have the inline, and then you have the out of band, where when you're pushing the traffic out to the cloud. And out of band really is just like, instead of having all the cars in the toll road and going through the booths, you actually, when you see huge traffic incoming, then you push everybody off the freeway, they exit the freeway, go to the booth, and then only the legitimate drivers come back into the highway, right? The other side.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like out of band. You just push them out and then it comes back in, but at least your highways is free. It's
free.
flowing, right?
That's
sort of the analogy. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a great analogy. We have another question. DDoS device, is it a hardware or software package?
Go ahead, Zen. Your turn.
It's both. I mean, hardware is required.
Right.
In the scenario, like for the CSPs, with our TAP model, we basically either the customer leases or purchases a Dell. We standardize on Dell, a Dell MX 7000 server or blade server, 8-blade server, and we deploy our software package. So basically, we're deploying your own personal scrubbing center within your infrastructure. If you're buying that whole that scenario, so you're going to have the App Shield. So in the software package, you have the App Shield, you have the Net Shield, and you have the DNS, as well as the whole management platform where it gives you the multi-tenant platform. So that's all software. But then we're also managing it, maintaining it, doing upgrades on it. And then, so let's say the hardware is yours. We haven't, I mean, look, the next iteration, hopefully sometime, will be that, like, bring any box with this capacity or this compute, and you can put it on there, but for now, because it's the most stable for our environment, Dell is what we've chosen, and they have great support. They're pretty stable device. So and we like the fact that, see, this box is 100 gigs that we recommend you start, has 2 blades available for upgrade, so it'll go up to 200 gigs. So
right.
when you calculate what, because we're not a hardware company, so we're not trying to sell gear. We really want to just sell the service and, you know, and help you sell the service, but it has to live somewhere. So
Yeah.
that said, we're not going to, you know, we don't end of life the you know, the hardware. We're not going to say, oh, well, you know, you got to upgrade this year, you need a new chassis, you know, or, oh, we'd love to give you the upgrade, but, you know, yeah, your device isn't that good. You can upgrade the device to 200 gig if you want to, you know, which can be done. But we feel that it's not necessary if, you know, if you have a full hybrid, like on-prem and a cloud-based solution in place, because you know, it covers itself. But
Right.
you know, so it's kind of like so it is hardware based, but it's a combination, right? So
Yeah.
you know, a lot of it lives in our cloud network as well.
We have another question. Michael wants to know, so some security vendors said that DNS should be the most important part for cybersecurity. What do you guys think? What should enterprise start for securing first in the system, DNS or DDoS?
Well, I'll take a crack at this, but you know, so the question is kind of like this: to prevent a thief or a robber to come into your house, do you buy the gun first, or the nasty dog, or the fence? You know, actually, you need three probably, right? So we kind of look at it the same way in the world of DDoS, right? Because if if somebody nefarious wants to create harm or havoc into your business, they're going to try to take you down, let's say, at the website first. And if they see that you have protection, then they're going to try to take down your network. So they go at the layer 3, 4, and they try to mess with your infrastructure. And then they go, oh, they have protection here too. So where do they go next? They go to the DNS infrastructure where there's no translation anymore. And so regardless whether your website is protected or not, there's no DNS translation happening. So boom, you're done. You know, so is DNS more important than DDoS? Well, it is important, but it's not the only thing that needs to be protected. Right. What do you think, Zen?
You know,
well, I would say this. I would say this as well. It depends who you are, right? If you're an enterprise customer, you know, you could say, oh, I have Dyn and they're DDoS protected, so my DNS is fine, which we found out it wasn't. You know, because anybody could have a bad day, right? Even an ISP. So, but if you're an ISP and you're serving DNS for your customers, they're relying on you to resolve their domain traffic. So if somebody, well, like we were saying earlier, if somebody is trying to get at one of your customers, what we see with these like bits and pieces attacks, they're amplification attacks, and instead of just going after one target, they just kind of spray it across several targets, almost like, hey, we know your customer's in here, he's the target, we're just going to knock a whole bunch of things down. Well, that'll happen on the DNS server. That'll happen, you know, that'll happen on the regular, you know, blocks of IP space. So they'll just start spraying everywhere, and then you'll have customers. You know, one of the other ISPs that we're working with, they keep going like, oh, did we get attacked? You know, we can't see it, because all of a sudden their customers will call complaining that, oh, these websites aren't accessible to us. That's because somebody's screwing around with the DNS, right? So it's like, you know, they're getting attacks, but it's not really huge. It wasn't like 100 gigs. It was something that just started, you know, knocking the DNS offline. So it's just as important. It depends. You know, if you're an ISP, it's pretty much common practice to provide DNS to your customers. You don't want to always say like, just go to Google for that, or just go to whoever for that. I mean, they will, or they should, but you still want to be able to have that service. Or like, what kind of ISP are you? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you know, I mean, so you should have it protected as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, most ISPs do offer DNS service, right? It comes with your, you know, like at my house, if I don't explicitly select what DNS service I want to use, it comes with it, you know. But is it DDoS protected? Well, I don't know.
Well, they want to provide it, because how else do they track your purchasing patterns?
Right,
oh,
exactly.
Wait, whoops. That's a different story, but yeah.
Yeah, whole different thing. Whole different ballgame.
One last question we'll get to. In terms of enterprises, what does competitive market pricing look like for DDoS protection solutions for enterprises?
For enterprises.
Yes.
Right, Alex. You're the big deal maker.
Well, you know, the pricing it varies by market, from market to market. So I can't really say. I don't know who's asking the question, but you know, okay, let's just say in general, bandwidth is more expensive in Asia than it is here in the United States or Europe. So you know, you can assume that if
I
they're
can tell you,
charging,
it's a telecom company asking.
oh, okay. So okay, let me answer it this way. A lot of ISPs, they're not charging for it because in order for them to play the game, they're just protecting the clean pipe, right? The bandwidth for their customers. So they're not even charging for it. But the ones that are, there's two different models. One is where it's more of a usage based. So you pay for a DDoS port, and whether it's 1 gig or 10 gigs, and then on top of that, you pay a usage which is a combination of your clean traffic plus the attack traffic. So there is a complicated formula that spits out at the end of the month and says, well, you got attacked, so here's your bill plus this, right? Plus the DDoS stuff. So they charge that amount. And then there's other ones out there that say, you know, forget all the calculation. What we're going to sell you is tiers of attack protection. So if you want attack protection for this amount of time and for this amount of attacks, then it's X or Y and Z, you know, so on and so forth. So there's different ways people are trying to monetize on this, but the pricing levels, again, it depends. I know you said it's a telco that asked the question, but it depends on the market and, you know.
Well, Alex, and that's also, is it application protection you're selling them? DNS protection?
Right, exactly.
Is it volumetric protection? Do you want unlimited attacks? Do you want me to take any single attack that comes in, 100 gig, 200 gig, my whole entire network, 1.5 terabit? You want me to take that for you? That's expensive, right?
Right.
Regardless.
So by the way, all of those options that I laid out before, that's only for network protection. It does not include layer 7 protection. You know, because, you know, then you're talking about protecting a website, protecting, you know, it from, you know, a SQL injection or cross-site scripting, then you know, deploying WAF in the cloud and things like that. So that doesn't come with clean pipe service. It doesn't come with, you know, your simple, you know, your bandwidth is protected from DDoS attacks.
Right.
Yeah.
So actually one of the ways that ISPs get taken advantage of by customers that get attacked a lot is that they ride the whole like, well, this should be included, right? And then they start getting attacked on a regular basis, and then attacks go from 5 gig, 10 gig, 20, you know, and then they're like, wait a minute, you know, that you are to mitigate. It's one thing to black hole an attack of that size, but to regularly mitigate, meaning that you're absorbing that attack for that customer. I mean, somebody has to pay for that bandwidth. You're paying for it. You're not charging them for it. So, you know, they're abusing you. Like, you know, that's not a free service, right? That's not something, you know, that should be included. It should be included. The network stays up, right? Great. But if you're getting attacked, you know, directly for whatever reason, well, then you're gonna, you know, so it used to be like back in the day when Prolexic and we were at Black Lotus and whatever, they used to have this like risk factor. Like, oh, what do you guys do? Oh, you're in porn or you're in gambling or you're in Bitcoin. Okay, your risk factor is way higher. So, you know, then we're like, well, how many attacks do you get? What was the biggest attack you've had? Okay, and then you go do the math. Okay, your price is 30,000 a month, right? And then you know, and that's how they did it because they were, you know, oh, you sell yarn, you're Michael's art. You've never been attacked? Oh, yeah, it's 2,000 a month. You're fine, right? I mean, like that's
the K factor?
Yeah, that's the K factor. Yeah, but that's basically like. So it really is, you know, what does the customer want? Like we say, there's knobs on everything that we do. It depends on what you want. Like you want to be like some customers, B of A, for example. They say we cannot go down ever. Like their homepage can never go down. Online banking ever. They pay a lot of money for that. Right, and they have two DDoS providers. They have level 3, and they've got Akamai. So you know they're paying a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that was great answers, guys. I think that is all the live questions that we had, and I had one pre-submitted question, which was the competitive market pricing question. So, without further ado, I think that wraps it up for this. Guys, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, great question.
Yeah,
this was great.
And Josie, we have something else coming up next week, right? Or something, or you want to?
Yes, I'm gonna stop share so you can see us. Yes, we do. We have another webinar next Thursday, I believe. It's Wednesday or Thursday. We're gonna do another webinar. So we'll send out information on that. For those, again, with us from PTC, stop by our networking lounge, visit us, hang out with us. We're all supposed to be in Hawaii, so let's chill together. Let's have a Mai Tai.
Yeah.
Schedule a meeting. You can
Why not?
chat. If you have questions on pricing, definitely schedule a meeting. I know these guys would love to answer any of your questions. And if you were with us last night, we had a really fun virtual trivia game, and we gave out an iPad to the winner. So that was fun. And I think we might be doing another one of those soon. I don't know. Zen.
Hey, let's do it. Let's do it.
Alex loved it.
That
So
was fun. I got it
yeah.
all wrong. I got not a single one right.
We are going to pick a winner. So if you were in the first webinar and then you joined the second webinar, your name was entered into a drawing, and I think we'll select the winner. You'll get an iPad. Do we have the winner, guys? I think we're going to select
that's above my pay grade. I think
Yeah.
You got to ask.
I'm
yeah,
gonna pull it out of thin air.
Yeah.
Here
Okay.
And I'm gonna
Pull
pass
from
it to
the
you.
cloud.
Ready? You
All
go.
of your names are in the cloud, and we're going to pull it from the cloud, and we'll announce that in the next few days.
Yeah, it'll probably come out in an email. I think that would be the best way to do it, because
Yes.
I wasn't briefed on that.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us from all around the world. We really appreciate everything. On behalf of Nexusguard, I'm Josie Taylor. This was great to moderate this. Thank you, Zen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
And yeah, we'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thank you.